The Australian government is actively destroying my plan for financial freedom. Months of planning for my future thrown in the dumps by threateningly significant policy changes. If you're a young investor like me who is looking into buying investment properties to fuel your future wealth, here's everything you need to know. Over the last few years, there have been several conversations around removing the capital gains tax discount, but this time it might come true. And I know capital gains tax sounds fancy, but here's what it really is. The current capital gains tax discount is 50%, essentially meaning that any growth through your investments only gets taxed on 50% of the total investment. It's like if you put $100 into shares and it grew to $150. You would only get taxed on $25, since that is half the money that you accumulated. Whereas if they remove the CGT discount, it would mean you are taxed on the full $50 worth of growth. While this may seem incremental, these numbers really start to add up in real-world examples. If you buy a property for $750,000 and you sell it for $850,000, you would only get taxed on $50,000, and the other $50,000 would be all yours to keep tax-free. While we overthink the potential changes to CGT, it is worth noting that there have also been rumours spreading about bringing back Australia's pre-1999 indexing method, meaning you will only be taxed on gains that beat inflation, making it a much more fair and worthwhile option. This stops you from losing the race to inflation, which could see the greatest benefit in high inflation years like 2026, where the interest rates are continuing to rise, and the RBA are expected to raise it to potentially 4.2% throughout the year. Now, hopefully you can start to see why this would deter investors away, as their potential gains have been significantly slashed. And to be honest, there are two sides to this. The purpose of removing the tax discount is for property reasons. It deters property investors, making them look to other strategies for their investments. And it works because under current Australian law, owner-occupier homes are exempt from capital gains tax as a whole. This is an attempt to save Australia's housing crisis and make homes more affordable. And I sort of sit in the middle of this. As a Gen Z, I know how impossible it may feel to buy a house in the future, and I feel for the people who are struggling to find hope. But as a young investor who plans on leveraging property, this couldn't come at a worse time. So the government is facing a housing crisis, and their solution to trying to drop the prices comes from decreasing demand. By deterring investors away, they ultimately lower the value of property, making it more affordable for first home buyers. However, in doing so, it cuts at the throats of those of us who are trying to do everything right and get ahead of the game, punishing young and future investors. The way I see it is, it makes living easier, but makes building long-term wealth more challenging. While I understand the reasons behind this, if they move forward with it, inevitably it works against my strategy to get ahead of the game and build wealth at an early age. I plan to utilize property growth to make the most of my investment. Even though it's still an option, it just makes it a lot less favorable. But this doesn't deter me away or completely put a thorn in my plan. And it shouldn't do so for you either. There are other great benefits of property investment. All it means is I'm going to rethink my strategy and revise my plan to purchase an investment property. This leaves me considering two main options. I can refinance, or put simply, use the equity on my first property and take that out as a loan from the bank to then put down a deposit on a second property, continuing this trend until I have a well-established portfolio. While this sounds great, it has its cons, mainly the maintenance involved. The more and more properties in my portfolio, the more maintenance and general workload would come just to keep my investments afloat. It's also worth mentioning that while a tax-free option sounds very appealing, it is actually considered debt as a loan from the bank. Alternatively, I can gravitate towards a more rental yield-based strategy. This would mean investing into a property that may not have as much aggressive value growth over time, but will provide a positively geared rental yield. This would then serve as another form of income that may see some value gain over time, but overall is best used for the extra semi-passive income. While this also sounds great, the obvious cons are the lack of capital gains over time, making options like refinancing invaluable. The cons surrounding this strategy is that, compared to a growth strategy, while it may be negatively geared at the start, or put simply, the rent you receive from a tenant is not enough to cover your mortgage, as time goes on, The rent will go up and your mortgage will decrease, meaning it will eventually become positively geared, meaning you've got the growth and the income, making the rental yield strategy less attractive. While CGT changes are the major concerns, there have been similar talks about removing the ability to claim negative gearing from your property on your tax report. As of current, you are able to use the negative gearing of your property to reduce your overall taxable income. Introducing this double whammy could shake the market and cause uncertainty around property investments and benefits. So not only could your rental yield not cover your mortgage, you wouldn't even be able to take that off your taxable income anymore, making the buy and hold strategy become significantly more expensive and overall less lucrative. With all of this in mind, I think I will still aim for a growth strategy, potentially refinancing to gain access to more investments. All I need is my first property to kickstart the development of my property portfolio. This means that yes, potentially I may feel the consequences of the policy change more than the other strategies. But what I need you to understand is, it's not like you are not going to make a profit. It just means that the profit you do make might be taxed more. In the end, you still come out on top. This isn't deterring me away from property at all, and to be honest, the biggest factor would be the change in the negative gearing tax deductions, as this would increase my overall expenses, effectively making a mortgage even more expensive than it was previously. My initial plan was to survive on the bare minimum, while I invest into investment property as soon as possible. And with the changes to negative gearing, that would indefinitely delay my timeline by potentially a few years, which is a little bit upsetting as I want as much time in the market as possible, but that's no reason to give up and not continue with my plan. Sometimes things change, and not everything's going to go to plan. It's also worth noting that refinancing is not grounds for triggering a tax event. What this means is that you are not taxed on any of the money that you access through refinancing, since it's done via a loan on your equity. This is one of the greatest benefits of property. I can use tax-free money adjacent to the increase in value of my first property to put down a deposit for my second property. And you can sort of see how this starts to spiral and how you can use this to leverage property. It is the most commonly applied method for property investors to build their portfolio. But does this worry me at all? And the answer is no, it doesn't, and it shouldn't worry you either. Is it ideal for young investors like you and I? No, it's not, but that doesn't instantly make the strategy invaluable. It is also worth noting that we will not have an official answer until May 12th. This is when the budget gets announced, as right now it's all just bubbling rumors. With this will come rules and regulations, conditions and other important information regarding this tax change if it is actually applied. Because at the moment, like I said, it is just speculation. Now, for current property owners, there are talks of potential grandfathering rules, which could work in a few different ways. Either current property owners are immune from the effects of this tax change, or all past gains are protected from CGT change, and the change will only be in effect regarding value gained after the effective date of change. It is possible the government does go with one of these strategies, a different strategy, or none of these strategies. Only time will tell. So, depending on the results of the budget announcement, I am prepared to perhaps buy a property earlier than intended if certain grandfathering rules apply. However, as I mentioned, it's too early to make any decisions at the moment. To give you an idea, if a grandfathering rule is put in place, I could see the value of buying a property before the proposed date change. Unless it is effective immediately, then I will not have the opportunity to do so. However, on the flip side, if only partial grandfathering was in place, I would not find the benefit in that, as most of my growth would take place post-regulation change. And just to remind you, I am not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice, so stick around to follow my journey as a young, ambitious investor in an unfavorable world. I would love to hear what your opinion is on the CGT changes and how, if at all, this is changing your plans and what you're going to do about it.